Some languages offer a version of a queue called a priority queue. This allows you to insert new elements into the queue that contain a priority. Could be something as simple as a number, so that new items could be added to the queue ahead of others already there. Now, if you add multiple items that have the same priority, they will queue as normal in a first in, first out order. But if something comes along with a higher priority, then it will go ahead of them in the queue, and it would be removed from the queue beforehand. Anything with a lower priority just queues up as normal behind them. Now, because it's up to you what priority means, you typically have to implement a comparator or a compare function, as when sorting arrays, so that you provide your own little bit of logic for what can be considered a higher or lower or equal priority object than another. Now, priority queues don't have the same kind of language support as regular queues. Java has a priority queue class, C++ has priority_queue container. Both of these require you to provide your own comparator. Now, priority queues, being an abstract data type, can be implemented in multiple ways. In Objective-C, you can do a priority queue behavior using a built-in data structure called a binary heap, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. We'll get to heaps a little later on. But as well as priority queues, you may also run into this term, deque. It's pronounced deque, and it means a double-ended queue. A double-ended queue is basically like having a stack and a queue at the same time. We have a collection of items, and we can add new items to this, but we can choose to add to either end, and we can remove either from the front or from the rear, both removing and adding to either end, behaving either like a stack or like a queue. The restriction is we can't remove from anywhere else in the collection. Now, seeing this term deque can be a little confusing because you'll also encounter the term deque, and these look very similar. deque, D-E-Q-U-E-U-E, is a verb, an operation, a method that we can enqueue and dequeue an element from a queue. In C#, for example, deque is the method to do that, whereas deque, D-E-Q-U-E, is a noun. A deque is a specialized kind of queue. It's a double-ended queue. So language support for this. Well, Java, like having a queue interface, also has a deque interface, and linked list supports that deque interface. Notice that linked list is turning out to be a very flexible class indeed in Java. It can behave like a linked list, and it can behave like a queue, and it can behave like a double-ended queue. In C++, there's a deque container type with methods like push back, push front, pop back, pop front, so you can choose to add and remove from either end. Python also has a deque class for this. Even though you could use a Python list, the deque is optimized for this kind of usage. Now, Ruby doesn't have a built-in explicit deque, and neither does .NET, and although you can provide equivalent behavior with a linked list or even a dynamic array, most of them will support the idea of adding specifically as the first or last element and removing from either the front or the end, but just be conscious of how large that gets, as continuously shuffling elements around an array is not a wonderfully efficient task. All right, priority queues and deques are certainly not things you will need on a daily basis, but it's useful to know they're available should you need them, and in many cases they are made available as optimized and efficient data structures already there in the language.